June 6, 1944. The waters off Normandy churned with diesel exhaust and cordite smoke. Waves crashed against steel hulls, carrying the metallic taste of war and the salt of destiny. On the deck of the USS Laffey, destroyer 724, Seaman First Class Robert Johnson wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve, his eyes fixed on the grey horizon where tracers pierced the morning mist. The sky pulsed with the drone of Allied aircraft, each second punctuated by the distant thunder of artillery. Through the ship's communication system, Captain Frederick Julian Beckton's voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. All stations prepare for close fire support. We are proceeding to within 3,000 yards of Utah Beach. The Laffey had not been designed for this kind of mission, but every man aboard understood that D-Day demanded impossible things from ordinary ships. From their concrete observation posts along the Atlantic Wall, German artillery spotters watched with calculated amusement as a single American destroyer broke formation and began steaming toward the shallow waters near the Norman coast. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, manning an observation bunker overlooking Utah Beach, lowered his binoculars and turned to his companion with a dismissive laugh. "Ein kleines Schiff," he muttered, studying the approaching silhouette of the Laffey through the morning haze. A small ship trying to do the work of a battleship. The German Coastal Defense Command had spent 4 years perfecting their strategy against Allied naval forces. They knew that destroyer escorts like the Laffey carried minimal armor protection and were designed for anti-submarine warfare, not for dueling with fortified shore batteries. According to their intelligence reports, no American destroyer captain would be foolish enough to bring his vessel within direct fire range of their 150mm coastal guns. The mathematics of naval warfare seemed to be on their side: armor thickness versus projectile penetration, range versus accuracy. They were about to discover that Captain Beckton operated by a different kind of mathematics entirely. The USS Laffey represented the pinnacle of American destroyer engineering in 1944, a product of the Alan M. Sumner-class design philosophy that prioritized firepower and reliability over heavy protection. Displacing 2,200 tons when fully loaded, she stretched 376 feet from bow to stern and carried a main armament of 6 5-inch Mark 12 dual-purpose guns mounted in 3 twin turrets. These weapons could fire a 54-pound projectile at targets up to 18,000 yards away, delivering both high-explosive and armor-piercing rounds with devastating accuracy. Her secondary armament included 12 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns and 11 20mm Oerlikon cannons, creating a web of defensive fire that could shred incoming aircraft. The ship's power plant consisted of 4 Babcock and Wilcox boilers, feeding steam to 2 General Electric turbines, generating 60,000 shaft horsepower and propelling the Laffey to a maximum speed of 34 knots. But raw statistics told only part of the story. The real strength of Destroyer 724 lay in her crew of 336 officers and enlisted men, trained in the rigorous tradition of the United States Navy and commanded by a captain who understood that leadership meant making decisions that seemed impossible to everyone except the man making. The morning of June 6th had begun with the Laffey serving as part of Task Force 125, providing escort duties for the invasion fleet approaching Utah Beach. As landing craft, loaded with soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division, began their final approach to the Norman coast, radio calls started flooding the communication networks with urgent requests for naval gunfire support. German strongpoints that had survived the pre-dawn bombardment were pouring machine gun and mortar fire onto the landing beaches, turning the surf red with American blood. Captain Beckton received orders to provide close fire support for the troops struggling to establish a foothold on French soil. But the mission parameters were unlike anything in the destroyer operations manual. Standard naval doctrine called for ships to maintain maximum distance while delivering indirect fire, using spotter aircraft and shore fire control parties to adjust their aim. The tactical situation at Utah Beach demanded something entirely different: direct fire at point-blank range against hardened fortifications, with the destroyer operating in waters barely deep enough to keep her keel off the bottom. At 0847 hours, Captain Beckton made the decision that would transform the USS Laffey from an ordinary destroyer escort into a legend of D-Day. He ordered his ship to break formation and proceed independently toward the beach, closing the distance until his 5-inch guns could deliver flat trajectory fire directly into the German bunkers. The engineering spaces responded immediately to the call for maximum power, and the Laffey's turbines began pushing her through the increasingly shallow water at flank speed. Fire Controlman Second Class William Hayes, manning the Mark 37 gun director above the bridge, watched his range indicators drop steadily as the ship closed the distance to the enemy positions. 4,000 yards, 3,000, 2,500. The German shore batteries had begun to track their movement, and Hayes could see the distinctive muzzle flashes of enemy guns along the coastline. At 2,800 yards from the beach, well within the effective range of every German weapon on that stretch of coast, Captain Beckton gave the order that every man aboard had been waiting for. All guns, commence firing. The first German shell struck the USS Laffey at 09:02 hours, a 150mm high-explosive round that impacted just forward of the No. 2 gun mount. The explosion sent a fountain of seawater and steel fragments across the forward deck, temporarily stunning the gun crews and filling the air with the acrid smell of burned cordite and hot metal. Damage control teams immediately responded to reports of flooding in the forward compartment, while radio operators struggled to maintain communication with the beach fire control parties through damaged antenna arrays. A second German shell landed 20 yards off the starboard bow, close enough to spray the bridge with shrapnel and seawater. Through the chaos and smoke, Captain Beckton maintained his position on the open bridge wing, calmly issuing orders to his gun crews, while German artillery continued to bracket his ship with increasing accuracy. The tactical situation had deteriorated rapidly from challenging to desperate, but the captain's voice remained steady as he called down to his executive officer, "Maintain course and speed. All guns continue firing." The USS Laffey's response to the German artillery bombardment demonstrated the superior training and technological advantages that American naval forces brought to the D-Day. Despite the damage to her forward sections, the ship's 3 gun mounts continued to deliver accurate fire against the German strongpoints, with each 5-inch shell carrying enough explosive power to collapse entire sections of concrete fortification. Fire Controlman Hayes had shifted to local control after the ship's main fire control radar was damaged by shell fragments, but the gun crews maintained their rate of fire through visual sighting and manual target designation. The Laffey's guns fired over 400 rounds during the first 20 minutes of the engagement, walking their shells systematically along the German defensive line and methodically destroying each gun emplacement that revealed its position by firing on American landing craft. German return fire intensified as more coastal batteries joined the fight, but Captain Beckton refused to increase his distance from the beach, instead ordering his helmsman to maintain position at the edge of the surf line where his guns could deliver the most effective fire support. For the next 4 hours, the USS Laffey conducted what naval historians would later describe as one of the most audacious single-ship actions of World War II. Operating in water so shallow that her sonar operators could barely distinguish between the sea bottom and enemy mines, the destroyer continued to engage German fortifications with direct gunfire, while simultaneously defending herself against air attacks from Luftwaffe fighters that dove out of the overcast sky. The ship's anti-aircraft battery, manned by gunners who had trained for months in the art of deflection shooting and target tracking, created a cone of defensive fire that turned the airspace around the Laffey into a lethal maze of exploding shells and tracer rounds. German Focke-Wulf 190 fighters made repeated strafing runs against the destroyer, but the concentrated fire from her Bofors and Oerlikon guns forced the attacking aircraft to break off their approach pattern before they could achieve accurate. Meanwhile, the ship's main battery continued to hammer German positions along the beach, with spotters from the 4th Infantry Division reporting the systematic destruction of machine gun nests and mortar positions that had been holding up the American advance inland. The psychological impact of the USS Laffey's close-range bombardment extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation at Utah Beach. German defenders who had been confident in the protection offered by their concrete bunkers and steel-reinforced gun positions found themselves under direct fire from naval artillery that could punch through 3 feet of reinforced concrete. Radio intercepts recorded by Allied intelligence units revealed the growing panic among German commanders as they realized that an American destroyer was operating with apparent impunity in waters that should have been completely dominated by coastal defense guns. The German 709th Static Infantry Division, responsible for defending this section of the Norman coast, had never encountered an enemy warship willing to engage their positions at such close range. Their tactical doctrine was based on the assumption that Allied naval forces would maintain safe distances while providing indirect fire support, giving the German gunners time to adjust their aim and concentrate their fire. Captain Beckton's decision to bring the Laffey within point-blank range of the shore battery had fundamentally changed the nature of the engagement, transforming what should have been a methodical artillery duel into a close-quarters brawl where American firepower and training advantage could be brought to bear with maximum effectiveness. By midday, the USS Laffey had expended over 60% of her main battery ammunition and suffered significant damage to her superstructure and forward hull sections. German shell fragments had punctured fuel lines, damaged radar arrays, and knocked out several secondary weapon mounts, but the ship's engineering plant continued to function at full capacity, and her main guns remained operational. Captain Beckton faced a critical decision: withdraw from the engagement area to conduct damage assessment and ammunition replenishment, or continue providing fire support for the infantry units that were finally beginning to break through the German defensive line. The tactical situation ashore had shifted dramatically during the morning hour, with American forces advancing inland against reduced resistance thanks to the systematic destruction of German strongpoints by naval gunfire. Radio messages from shorefire control parties indicated that several key objectives were within reach, but only if the destroyer could continue providing suppressive fire against remaining German positions. The captain's decision to remain in the combat zone despite his ship's damaged condition reflected the aggressive leadership philosophy that characterized American naval operations during World War II. Rather than prioritizing ship preservation over mission accomplishment, Beckton chose to accept additional risk in order to maximize the effectiveness of his fire support mission. This decision-making process represented the culmination of years of professional military education and combat training, where naval officers learned to balance competing priorities of mission success, force preservation, and personnel safety. The industrial capacity of American shipbuilding meant that damaged vessels could be repaired or replaced, but the opportunity to provide decisive fire support during the critical hours of D-Day would never come again. Captain Beckton understood that the USS Laffey's primary mission was not to survive the war intact, but to contribute to Allied victory through aggressive action against enemy forces. The afternoon hours of June 6th brought a new phase of the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement, as German resistance shifted from coordinated defensive fire to desperate counterattacks against the expanding American beachhead. Luftwaffe aircraft began appearing over Utah Beach in greater numbers, forcing the destroyer to divide her attention between shore bombardment and anti-aircraft defense. The ship's gun crews demonstrated the versatility of American naval training as they rapidly shifted between different target types and engagement ranges, firing high-explosive shells against German bunkers one moment and switching to proximity-fused anti-aircraft rounds to engage diving Messerschmitt fighters the next. This rapid target switching required precise coordination between the ship's fire control systems and her individual gun mounts, with enlisted men loading different ammunition types while petty officers adjusted firing solutions for targets, ranging from stationary fortifications to high-speed aircraft. The complexity of these operations, conducted under enemy fire and with damaged equipment, showcased the superior training and technological sophistication that gave American naval forces their decisive advantage in naval combat. German counterfire against the USS Laffey reached its peak intensity during the early afternoon hours, as surviving coastal batteries concentrated their remaining ammunition on the destroyer that had been methodically destroying their positions throughout the morning. The ship's damage control teams worked continuously to repair battle damage while the vessel remained in combat, welding steel plates over shell holes, rerouting electrical cables around damaged sections, and maintaining steam pressure to the turbines despite multiple hits to the engineering spaces. Chief Petty Officer Thomas Mitchell, leading one of the damage control teams, later described the surreal experience of conducting emergency repairs while 5-inch shells exploded overhead and machine gun bullets rattled against the ship's hull plating. The professionalism and technical competence of the Laffey's crew during these critical hours demonstrated the effectiveness of American naval training programs that emphasized damage control and emergency procedures as essential combat skills. Every sailor aboard the destroyer understood that keeping their ship operational under fire was not just a matter of professional pride, but a requirement for mission success and crew survival. The tactical situation at Utah Beach began to shift decisively in favor of American forces during the late afternoon of D-Day, as the systematic destruction of German strongpoints by naval gunfire allowed infantry units to advance inland and establish defensive positions beyond the reach of remaining coastal batteries. The USS Laffey's contribution to this success could be measured in both quantitative and qualitative terms. Over 800 rounds of 5-inch ammunition expended against enemy positions, 17 confirmed bunker destruction, and countless German casualties inflicted by accurate naval gunfire. But the qualitative impact of the destroyer's action extended far beyond simple target destruction. By maintaining her position within direct fire range of the beach throughout the critical morning hours, the Laffey had provided American infantry with the confidence and fire support necessary to break through what had appeared to be an impregnable defensive line. German defenders, demoralized by the relentless naval bombardment and unable to effectively return fire against a target that moved constantly along the waterline, began abandoning their positions and retreating inland towards secondary defensive lines. As evening approached on June 6th, Captain Beckton finally received orders to withdraw from the coastal bombardment zone and rejoin the main task force operating in deeper water offshore. The USS Laffey's combat effectiveness had been reduced by accumulated battle, and her ammunition magazines were nearly empty after 12 hours of continuous combat. The ship's withdrawal from Utah Beach marked the end of one of the most successful single-ship actions in naval history, but it also represented a beginning, the establishment of American naval supremacy in the waters off Normandy. German forces had learned that American destroyers, despite their relatively light armor and modest size, could deliver devastating firepower when commanded by officers willing to accept tactical risks in pursuit of strategic objectives. The psychological impact of the Laffey's D-Day performance would influence German naval strategy for the remainder of the war, as coastal defense commanders realized that no position within range of American naval guns could be considered truly secure. The USS Laffey's performance on D-Day established tactical precedents that would influence American naval operations throughout the remainder of World War II. The ship's successful close-range engagement with fortified shore positions demonstrated that destroyer-class vessels, when properly handled, could perform missions traditionally reserved for heavy cruisers and battleships. This tactical innovation reflected broader changes in naval warfare doctrine that emphasized flexibility, aggressive leadership, and the creative use of available resources rather than rigid adherence to established procedures. Captain Beckton's decision to bring his destroyer within direct fire range of enemy coastal batteries represented a calculated risk that paid dividends in terms of mission effectiveness and strategic impact. The success of this unconventional approach would inspire similar tactics during subsequent amphibious operations in the Pacific Theater, where American destroyers routinely operated in shallow water to provide close fire support for landing forces. The industrial and technological factors that enabled the USS Laffey's D-Day success reflected the broader advantages that American forces brought to World War II naval combat. The ship's 5-inch guns represented the culmination of decades of American naval artillery development, incorporating advanced metallurgy, precision machining, and sophisticated fire control systems that gave them decisive advantages over comparable German weapons. The reliability of American naval engineering was demonstrated by the Laffey's ability to maintain full power and maneuverability throughout 12 hours of combat operations, despite multiple hits from enemy artillery. This mechanical reliability, combined with the superior training and morale of American naval personnel, created a synergistic effect that multiplied the combat effectiveness of individual ships and weapon systems. The USS Laffey's D-Day performance was not just a story of individual heroism, but a demonstration of how American industrial capacity, technological innovation, and military training combined to create decisive advantages on the battlefield. In the weeks following D-Day, intelligence reports from captured German officers revealed the profound impact that the USS Laffey's bombardment had made on enemy morale and tactical planning. German commanders had been shocked by the appearance of an American destroyer operating with apparent impunity in waters that should have been dominated by coastal defense batteries. The systematic destruction of fortified positions by accurate naval gunfire had demonstrated to German forces that their Atlantic wall defenses, built at enormous cost in labor and materials over 4 years, could be neutralized by American naval technology and aggressive tactics. This realization contributed to a broader collapse of German confidence in their ability to defend the Norman coast against Allied amphibious operations. The psychological warfare value of the Laffey's D-Day action extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation, influencing German strategic planning and resource allocation for the remainder of the European campaign. The USS Laffey's survival of her D-Day engagement was followed by an even more remarkable test of durability and crew training 9 months later. when the ship encountered 22 Japanese kamikaze aircraft off Okinawa and survived what naval historians consider the most intense air attack ever survived by a single American warship. This subsequent action, which earned the Laffey the nickname "the ship that would not die," validated the design philosophy and crew training that had enabled her D-Day success. The connection between these two engagements was not coincidental. Both demonstrated how superior American naval technology, combined with aggressive leadership and professional crew training, could overcome apparently impossible tactical situations. The Laffey's D-Day and Okinawa actions became case studies in naval warfare colleges, illustrating the importance of damage control training, flexible tactical thinking, and the willingness to accept calculated risks in pursuit of mission success. Captain Frederick Julian Beckton's leadership during the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement exemplified the command philosophy that characterized successful American naval operations throughout World War II. His decision to maintain position within enemy artillery range while providing close fire support reflected a deep understanding of both naval tactics and the broader strategic requirements of the Normandy invasion. Beckton's willingness to risk his ship and crew in order to maximize mission effectiveness demonstrated the kind of aggressive leadership that American naval training programs were designed to develop. The captain's calm demeanor under fire and his ability to make rapid tactical decisions while under direct enemy attack became legendary among his crew and contributed to the ship's reputation for exceptional combat effectiveness. Beckton's D-Day performance earned him the Navy Cross and established him as one of the most respected destroyer commanders in the United States Navy. The technical aspects of the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement revealed the sophisticated nature of American naval gunnery systems and the intensive training required to operate them effectively under combat conditions. The ship's Mark 37 fire control system, combined with her Mark 12 dual-purpose guns, represented state-of-the-art naval artillery technology that gave American destroyers decisive advantages over comparable vessels in enemy navies. The system's ability to track multiple targets simultaneously while computing firing solutions for different ammunition types allowed the Laffey to engage shore battery, aircraft, and surface targets with equal effectiveness. This technological sophistication was meaningless without properly trained personnel to operate it, and the Laffey's gun crews demonstrated mastery of complex procedures while under intense enemy fire. The integration of advanced technology with superior training created a combat capability that no enemy navy could match during World War II. The logistical support that enabled the USS Laffey's extended combat operation on D-Day illustrated the massive organizational effort required to sustain amphibious operations against fortified enemy positions. The ship's ammunition expenditure during 12 hours of combat would normally require several days to replenish, but the invasion fleet included specialized ammunition ships that could conduct at-sea transfers while underway. The Laffey's fuel consumption during high-speed maneuvering and maximum power operations was similarly supported by fleet oilers that maintained constant availability for refueling operations. This logistical capability, multiplied across hundreds of vessels participating in the Normandy invasion, represented one of the most complex supply operations in military history. The success of D-Day depended not just on the courage of individual crews like the Laffey, but on the industrial and organizational capacity that kept them supplied with ammunition, fuel, food, and replacement parts throughout the operation. The USS Laffey's D-Day performance became part of a broader narrative about American naval effectiveness during World War II, demonstrating how democratic values and industrial capacity could be translated into decisive military advantages. The ship's crew represented a cross-section of American society: farmers from the Midwest, factory workers from industrial cities, students from university, all united by shared training and common purpose. Their ability to operate sophisticated naval equipment while under enemy fire reflected the educational and technical capabilities of American society, while their willingness to risk their lives for mission success demonstrated the ideological commitment that sustained Allied forces throughout the war. The Laffey's D-Day action was simultaneously a story of individual heroism and collective achievement, showing how democratic institutions could mobilize human and material resources more effectively than totalitarian alternatives. The immediate aftermath of the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement saw the ship continuing her fire support mission until her ammunition magazines were nearly exhausted, and her battle damage required immediate attention from repair facilities. The destroyer's withdrawal from Utah Beach marked the end of her direct participation in the initial phase of the Normandy invasion, but her contribution to the operation's success was already evident in the rapid advance of American infantry units inland from the beachhead. German resistance in the Laffey's operational area had been systematically destroyed by accurate naval gunfire, allowing assault troops to establish defensive positions and begin the process of expanding Allied control over French territory. The tactical success achieved by a single destroyer operating independently demonstrated the effectiveness of American naval doctrine that emphasized aggressive action and flexible mission planning over rigid adherence to standard procedures. The strategic implications of the USS Laffey's D-Day performance extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation at Utah Beach. The ship's successful engagement with fortified shore positions validated American amphibious warfare doctrine and provided valuable lessons for subsequent operations in both European and Pacific theaters. German defenders had learned that coastal fortification, regardless of their apparent strength, could not withstand sustained bombardment by American naval forces willing to operate at close range. This realization forced German commanders to reconsider their defensive strategy and led to changes in fortification design and artillery placement that continued to influence coastal defense planning throughout the war. The Laffey's D-Day action thus contributed to broader shifts in military thinking about the relationship between naval power and land-based defenses. The human cost of the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement was remarkably light, considering the intensity and duration of the combat action. Despite 12 hours of continuous fighting and multiple hits from German artillery, the ship suffered only minor casualties among her crew. This exceptional survival rate reflected both the effectiveness of American damage control training and the inherent survivability features built into destroyer design. The ship's compartmentalization allowed her to absorb battle damage without losing essential capability, while her crew's training in emergency procedures enabled rapid response to fires, flooding, and equipment. The low casualty rate also demonstrated the protective value of aggressive tactics. By closing rapidly with enemy positions and maintaining continuous fire, the Laffey prevented German gunners from achieving the kind of sustained accuracy that might have produced catastrophic damage. As darkness fell on June 6, 1944, the USS Laffey finally departed the waters off Utah Beach to rejoin the main invasion fleet operating in deeper water offshore. The destroyer's hull showed numerous scars from German shell fragments. Her superstructure was blackened by smoke and explosions, and her ammunition magazines were nearly empty after 12 hours of continuous combat. But the ship remained fully operational. Her engines maintained full power, and her crew had demonstrated the kind of professional competence and personal courage that would become legendary in American naval history. The Laffey's D-Day performance had transformed what began as a routine fire support mission into one of the most celebrated single-ship actions of World War II, establishing precedents for aggressive naval tactics that would influence American maritime strategy for generations to come. The USS Laffey's D-Day legacy extended far beyond her immediate contribution to the success of the Normandy invasion. The ship's performance on June 6, 1944, became a symbol of American naval excellence and a demonstration of how ordinary men could achieve extraordinary results when supported by superior technology, training, and leadership. The destroyer's successful engagement with fortified shore positions showed that democratic nations could produce military forces capable of overcoming any enemy advantage in terrain, fortification, or strategic position through the application of industrial technology and aggressive tactics. This lesson resonated throughout the remainder of World War II and continued to influence American military thinking during the Cold War era, when technological superiority and professional military education became the foundations of American defense strategy. The technical innovations demonstrated during the USS Laffey's D-Day engagement contributed to post-war developments in naval gunnery and fire control systems. The ship's successful use of direct fire against shore targets at extremely close range provided valuable data for naval architects and weapons designers working on next-generation destroyer designs. The lessons learned from the Laffey's combat performance influenced the development of guided missile destroyers and advanced fire control systems that would give the United States Navy decisive advantages in subsequent conflict. The integration of radar technology, computer-assisted fire control, and precision-guided munitions that characterized Cold War naval systems could trace their conceptual origins to the kind of close-range, high-intensity combat that the Laffey had mastered on D-Day. The USS Laffey's D-Day story became part of the broader narrative of American naval supremacy during World War II, demonstrating how individual ship actions contributed to strategic victory through accumulated tactical successes. The destroyer's performance off Utah Beach was replicated by hundreds of other American warships operating in combat zones around the world, from the frigid waters of the North Atlantic to the tropical seas of the Pacific Islands. Each successful engagement built upon the lessons learned from previous actions, creating a cumulative effect that gave American naval forces decisive advantages over their enemies. The Laffey's D-Day action was both unique in its specific circumstances and representative of the broader pattern of American naval excellence that characterized the World War II era. In the years following World War II, the USS Laffey was preserved as a museum ship in Charleston, South Carolina, where visitors can still walk her decks and examine the gun mounts that delivered such devastating fire against German positions on D-Day. The ship serves as a tangible reminder of the human courage and technological achievement that made Allied victory possible, while her preserved condition allows new generations to appreciate the complexity and sophistication of World War II naval equipment. The Laffey's museum exhibits include detailed explanations of the damage control procedures, gunnery techniques, and tactical innovations that enabled her D-Day success, providing educational opportunities that connect historical events with contemporary military and technological development. The USS Laffey's D-Day performance continues to be studied in naval warfare colleges around the world as an example of how aggressive leadership, superior training, and advanced technology can overcome apparently impossible tactical situations. The ship's successful close-range engagement with fortified shore position violated most established principles of naval warfare, yet achieved complete tactical success through careful planning and flawless execution. This paradox illustrates one of the fundamental characteristics of American military doctrine during World War II, the willingness to challenge conventional thinking when circumstances demanded innovative solutions. The Laffey's D-Day action became a case study in adaptive leadership and tactical flexibility that continues to influence military education and strategic planning in the 21st century. What made Captain Beckton's decision to bring the USS Laffey within direct fire range of German coastal batteries so remarkable was not just the tactical success it achieved, but the way it demonstrated the unique characteristics that distinguished American military leadership during World War II. The captain's willingness to risk his ship and crew in order to provide maximum support for infantry forces ashore reflected a command philosophy that prioritized mission accomplishment over personal or unit preservation. This approach, replicated by thousands of American military leaders at every level of command, created a cumulative effect that proved decisive in achieving Allied victory. The USS Laffey's D-Day performance thus serves as both a specific example of naval excellence and a broader illustration of the values and principles that enabled democratic nations to triumph over totalitarian alternatives. The story of the USS Laffey on D-Day reminds us that victory in warfare is not determined solely by the size of armies or the power of weapons, but by the courage of individuals willing to risk everything for principles larger than themselves. The destroyer's crew, facing overwhelming odds in hostile waters, chose to fulfill their mission regardless of personal cost. Their decision to remain within enemy artillery range while providing fire support for American infantry demonstrated the kind of selfless dedication that has characterized American military service throughout the nation's history. Can we, in our comfortable modern lives, summon even a fraction of the courage these men displayed when faced with our own challenges and responsibilities? The USS Laffey's D-Day legend stands as testament to what ordinary people can achieve when united by extraordinary purpose. These sailors, many barely out of high school, operated the most sophisticated naval technology of their era while under direct enemy fire, making split-second decisions that would determine not just their own survival, but the fate of thousands of soldiers struggling to establish a foothold on a hostile shore. Their story deserves to be remembered, studied, and shared with new generations who must carry forward the values they fought to preserve. If this story of courage, innovation, and sacrifice has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with others who appreciate the debt we owe to those who gave everything to secure the freedom we enjoy today. Their memory lives on only as long as we continue to tell their stories and honor their legacy. The USS Laffey and her crew earned their place in history through blood, steel, and unwavering determination. The least we can do is ensure their sacrifice is never forgotten.